أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد اللهم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي آمين يا رب العالمين. So today inshallah we'll continue with the ayat of the dhikr, the ayah from Surah Maryam. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى واذكر رحمة ربك عبده زكريا إذ نادى ربه نداء خفيا. It's the beginning of the Surah Maryam, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned of the mercy of your Lord unto his servant Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam, when he cried unto his Lord a cry in secret, nida'an khafiya. Of course, the nida here, as I mentioned, is a prayer. Ulama, the Tabari and the Ibn Kathir and the Qurtubi and some others mentioned the many things about this Zikr Rahmat Rabbika Abdahu Zakaria. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking here about or mentioning one of his or the Rahmah itself is a mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala towards his servant. Whoever remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, mention his name, the Rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is coming down. So just mentioning in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Prophet Zakaria, is mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala towards his servant or Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And he was a great prophet. He was great prophet of the people of or children of Israel. And there is a narration that is authentic from Imam Bukhari, where Prophet ﷺ says, وَكَانَ نَبِيًّا عَظِيمًا مِنْ أَنْبِيَاءِ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيل. He was a great prophet from the prophets of children of Israel. And another narration, إِنَّهُ كَانَ نَجَّارًا. He used to be the carpenter. How you say it? Carpenter, yeah. So Najjar, he was Najjar. كان يأكل من عمل يده في النجار. So he used to basically produce from his hands, did not wait from the people or begging people, but he was working. And this is great example of all prophets. Actually, they used to work some kind of the job themselves and produce things or food for themselves. And this is how he used to do things in his life. And another ayah, إنني أنا الله في سورة طه لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدني وأقم الصلاة لذكري. Of course, this ayah indeed, I like this translation, how it says, lo, I am Allah. I mean, I don't know which translation is this used, maybe very old, but the modern translation, إنني أنا Allah, indeed I am Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لا إله إلا أنا, there is no God except me, فاعبدني, then worship me, وأقم الصلاة لذكر, and then pray or establish the prayer to remember me. Of course, there is no the best dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, أفضل ذكر لا إله إلا الله, as the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam is telling us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in this ayah in the Surah Taha, I am the one who is to be worshipped, or who has a right to be worshipped, or worthy of worship, and none but him is worthy of worship. So there is no other deity, so there is nothing else what people used to do and worship in their lives. And many of the scholars, they say that whatever we do and we don't worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this case we don't pray or we are not thinking about Allah, so then his job or whatever he or she does is basically idle, because we don't have time for Allah, for the real God, and we have time for something else. There is a hadith from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam said, من نسي الصلاة فليصليها إذا ذكرها. So this advice of the Prophet ﷺ, whoever forgets the prayer, let him pray it when he remembers it. And then Prophet ﷺ recited this ayah, وَاقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِ, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering us to establish the prayer to remember him. And there is another narration of the Prophet ﷺ, من نام عن صلاة أو نسيها فليصليها إذا ذكرها. Whoever, like sometimes you get tired and you sleep and you did not pray, or you forgot. Maybe you when you wake up you forgot that you pray. So then you pray it when you remember it. When you remember it, but the prayer should not be left and should not be leave without praying, because even if you miss it, we have to make it up. And that this is the proof, or as the Prophet said, وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِلذِّكْرِ, when he used to advise companions radiallahu anhum ajma'in. So the prayer must be established whatsoever there is a dhikr, or we sleep, or whatever is happening, busy here and there. So still, first chance that we have to pray, we have to make up the prayer. And lastly, about the prayer, and we know that the prayer is Amududdin, which is the pillar of Islam. من هدم من هدم من ترك or لم يصلي, whoever does not pray, basically هدم الدين. There is no prayer, there is no deen. Because when we come to the pillar of Islam, we know that prayer is one of the pillar of Islam. Of course, that does not mean that whole religion is destroyed, like somebody become kafir. No, that's not the case. But you're one of these pillars, you're destroyed because of the prayer. That is our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is very important from when we come to the worship subject. Salah is always number one. Of course, when you come to the grave or the qabr, there's a three questions that all of us we know. So then every subject will be, there's the first question: who is your Lord? In general, that is the subject, or the Lordship, whom we used to worship. And then the Prophet, when we come to the Prophet whom we follow. And then generally the deen. So then, there is so many questions, but when we come to say the first question will be this. But we have a school, the first question from the math, from first question from geography, from first question from science, so like that. But the general questions are three in the grave. So we have to take care about the prayer. Prayer is very important. The Prophet ﷺ, actually, in the last moments, he used to advise and saying to Hafizu ala salah, take care of your prayers, because the prayer is very important. And he told us that any danger can happen to us because leaving of the prayers. And the many of the temptations that Ummah is facing today is because of the prayer. We don't pray, or majority of the Muslims. A lot of the Muslims, they don't. Not necessarily they reject prayer, because who rejects prayer becomes a kafir, because that is the order of Allah. It becomes a kafir, but not from that case, but they are just lazy not to pray. Like if you say to someone, let's go pray, there are so many excuses. So they are lazy for the prayer. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us and make us of those who will remember Allah so often and establish prayer. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.